This is going to be part 2 of trying to reprofile this Opinel number 6. It has a carbon blade, and to begin with, if you watch part 1, I was having a problem with the bevel width up here. I was getting overly concerned with the fact that the bevel width at the tip is narrower than it is along the belly or the rest of the edge. And it was more so, it seemed to be more so on one side, but anyway, I quit, that video ended, and I got to wondering about that and looking, and here's the thing. The steel at the tip, I believe this to be the case, is thinner than it is down here. So the blade itself is thicker along from the heel, around the belly, and then it gets thinner. I hope you can see, I think this is called a distill taper. The blade gets thinner from here where this swedge, I think you call it, starts. Therefore, since the blade is thinner, if the angle is the same, which that's what I was hoping for and shooting for, the bevel will be thinner. So evidently, I'm going to go with the assumption that I've been doing what I'm supposed to do accurately, or as accurately as possible. But I was concerned that the bevel wasn't the same width, and that was not what I should be worried about, because I think the bevel is the correct width given the thickness of the steel, the thickness of the blade. So I'm going to continue on. I have switched from the 320 stone to a 1K grit, and I'm going to continue working on this edge. Now the edge angle and the bevel is pretty much set with the coarser grit, the 320 stone. Now I'm going to be polishing the bevel more than anything else. So I also started trying to apex the edge in the other video, and I was not able to do it before I'm using my tablet, the camera on my tablet, to take these videos. And there's a limit on how long a video can be on this tablet, and the video quit after approximately 30 minutes, 33 minutes, something like that. So anyway, I did work on it a little bit more in between videos, and that's when I looked at the thickness of the blade and thought about the width of the bevel. Excuse me. But now I'm continuing on with the 1K to polish the bevel and finish reprofiling this edge. One thing I've had to do for these videos is prop up the end of the stone, the distant end, so that because of the position of the camera and all that stuff. But what I've found is I actually like it, because the water will run down towards me on top of the stone, and then when I stroke, I'm going up. So what I'm getting at is the water stays on the stone a little bit more than it does when it's flat. Not a big deal, but just something I noticed. And again, the reason I started making videos was to demonstrate this technique that I'm using. So I think I'll go over that a little bit while I'm doing this for anybody that hadn't heard it yet. But my technique, not mine, but the one I have started using, and it has come from advice from a lot of very skilled people. I haven't come up with anything that I know of that's my own. It's all from learning from others. It's always better to learn from somebody that knows more than you do, so you don't reinvent the wheel, go through the time and struggle of making all the same mistakes they've made. Might as well learn from other people's mistakes whenever possible. Anyway, I keep the blade at a 90-degree angle with the stone. I set the edge angle by lifting the spine off the stone, and then I control where I'm sharpening along the edge by lifting and lowering the handle straight up at a 90-degree angle from the surface of the stone. As you raise your hand, you get around the belly all the way to the tip. When you lower your hand, you're getting the heel end of the edge. And that's all there is to it. The only thing that will change is the angle on your edge. And that would be due to one of two things. One, and this is a pretty consistent thing, is the fact that nobody can hold a perfect edge or a perfect angle when freehand sharpening. It's always going to be a certain amount of convex roundness to the bevel. The other thing is when you intentionally change the angle from, like the angle that I'm using right now, or trying to create right now, the edge angle, and if I were to finish polishing the bevel and then want to put a higher angle micro bevel or edge bevel or primary edge, whatever you want to call it, if you intentionally raise the angle just when apexing the edge, that would be another time that the angle will change. But lifting your hand and keeping the 90-degree angle with the blade on the stone are two things that are constant with this technique. I think it's a good technique for people who are just beginning to sharpen because it's very simple. And that's all. It's not better, I don't think, than other techniques. Well, consistency is the main thing. Whatever you're doing, you need to do it over and over again if you expect the same results. Doing things different every time, or doing everything, I don't want to get into that. I'm going to start confusing myself. You want to keep what you're doing consistent. If what you're doing is working. If it's not working the way you want it to, then you need to change. But when you find something that works, sharpening a knife anyway, just keep doing that. You don't have to copy what somebody else does, unless you can get better results by doing that. Okay, that should be probably enough time on this stone to polish the edge up a little bit, or polish the bevel. The scratch pattern looks pretty even. The bevel is still not perfectly even, the bevel width around the blade. And when I started on this blade, that's what I was going to try to fix, but it doesn't seem to be working that well, and that's probably due to my lack of skill and lack of experience, which is no problem because I have a huge lack of skill and experience. So anyway, I'm going to switch to the 4K stone now. Yeah, I've been working hard at freehand sharpening for I think about 8 months or 10 months or possibly a year. I don't know. Time passes when you're having fun, so it might have been a longer period of time than I realized, but I'd say a year at the most. And I'm learning, and I'm making videos now for two reasons. One, if it can help somebody that's just getting started, that's good. And if somebody can watch this and give me pointers on improving, that's even better for me. So it's a two-way street I'm hoping for. All right, now I'm at the 4K stone. Let me make sure. Yeah, I have been sharpening before thinking I was on a particular grit and working my fingers to the bone. One time I had the 8K stone down on the table, and I was working and working, thinking it was a 1K or possibly 3K. I don't remember what I thought it was, but it was the 8K, and I was wondering why in the heck is this thing not cutting? And then I felt like an idiot after about 10 minutes or so, probably. down and I saw the stone I thought I was using sitting on the table. One thing about these Opinel knives is this is the only one I have. It's a number 6. I got this one instead of a smaller one because this is about as big as, this is about my perfect or my favorite size for an everyday carry knife. I think the blade is about 3 inches long, but this is the smallest one that has a lock. And if you haven't seen these knives, it's pretty cool. It's a wooden handle cut. I mean, there's a groove cut in it, and they put this band around it that spins. Now you see you can close it, but you spin it, and let me make sure you can see that. It locks in place. Now you don't want to go mountain climbing with this thing and expect to hang off the side of a mountain with a locked folder, but very secure. The carbon steel on these things is very nice, holds a good edge, gets very sharp, and I think this one cost me about $13. The only thing I don't like about it is like what I'm doing now, sharpening on the water stones. Water's getting into the pivot, and it's getting to bare wood. And I don't know if these things are sealed in any way, but you know, you don't get the smooth action that you do with nicer, more expensive folders, but it's a very good steel, and that's really the only thing I really like about these knives, or this knife, since it's the only one I have. But everybody that has them seems to like them. Very inexpensive, made in France. You can look at their factory on the internet if you want to. It's pretty cool. But the fact that the blade, steel, seems to be a very good one. I'm no expert on that stuff, but this gets very sharp and it holds the edge a very respectable amount of time from whatever kind of testing or use that I put knives through. It's how it seems to me. So if you ever thought about getting one and you haven't, I'd recommend it. They're not expensive at all. So if you like to carry a knife, but you don't like to loan your knives to people, it might be a good idea to carry this one, because then if you do get in a situation where somebody says, hey, let me borrow your knife, you don't have to give in your Sebenza or your Spyderco Chaparral or my brand new Spyderco Stretch with a super blue blade steel. You can hand them this thing. If they decide to keep it, you can let them have it. You don't have to get in a fight. Just go get another one. Or if they break it, it's more realistic, or dull the edge or whatever. It's not going to break the bank if you have to replace it. Or better yet, if you lose it. That's probably what would happen most often. I don't think I've ever loaned a knife to anybody that would actually take it on purpose. I may start making these videos, if I continue to do it, with the camera somewhere else, because right now it's right in front of me on this workbench that I made, and it's between me and the stone. Very awkward. It's not a good position for holding a consistent angle. It's not comfortable. It's hurting my back a little bit. My back's not in the best of condition anyway. This is uncomfortable. So I may start doing it. But the reason I chose this camera position is so that you could see the sharpening happening from the same viewpoint you have when you actually sharpen. And the viewpoint I consider to be important because of the technique that I choose, and the part of the technique that I choose actually is switching hands. Now, when I look at the knife on the stone, it looks the same. I've got the same visual picture when I'm sharpening both sides than I would if I went up like this and continued to use my right hand and flip the edge over. I can't tell as easily if I've got the same angle. I'll know more by looking at it. You see what I'm saying? That's the only reason I use my left hand. And I started that recently in the past 2 or 3 years. All my life I just use the right hand and go back and forth and get the knife pretty sharp. I could get it, if I wanted to, I could get it where it would shave the hairs on my arm. But I didn't have any real technique that I knew of. My dad showed me how to sharpen a knife when I was about 10 or 12 years old. He said, you move this thing back and forth on this stone until you have a burr on the other side, and you grind it a few times on that stone. Then you try to get rid of the burr on whichever side it's on best you can, and then you put the knife in your pocket. And that's what I did all my life until recently when I wanted to get my knives sharper. Actually, I started buying better knives too, so it's all came in a package. Kind of funny, I thought I just wanted one knife that would hold an edge for a long time. Well, what I found is those 2 Arkansas oil stones that I had were not capable of sharpening the higher quality steels, the harder steels. And the reason they weren't capable is I had never known anything about cleaning them or flattening them or anything. So I had them about 20 years probably, and they were old and beat up, dished and dirty and clogged, and they couldn't sharpen the steels I was buying. So I had to improve, and then came the journey into diamond stones and whatnot. Now what I like is these Shapton glass stones for water stones and Spyderco ceramic stones. That's what I use. I've got some DMTs that I use. I really like them, but I prefer, if I want a clean stone that I don't have to use this water and get this sharpening pond out that I made, I prefer the Spyderco stones. They do an excellent job, in my opinion. Okay, I call it quits with this one. How much time? Okay. Got 18 minutes. That means I've got about 10 or 12 minutes probably left for this video. That was the 4K, so now I'm going to go to the 8K. And you don't have to use all these stones. The edge that's on there now, I'm not sure how sharp it is. I haven't tried to cut it. I'm just working on finishing the polishing on the bevels, and I think it'll cut okay. It would open cardboard boxes fine, but it doesn't have that sharp, crisp edge that I like and a lot of people like. But what I was getting at is you can get a very, very good edge with the 1K stone or the 4K stone. I think the rule of thumb is the coarser the stone is that you use, the toothier the edge will be for that particular knife, if that's what you want. And the higher the grit the stone you go to, the smoother the edge will be. And smooth is something you would want on a straight razor to shave with. Toothy is what you would want if you cut a lot of rope. Everyday carry pocket knives tend to cut no telling what. You don't know what you're going to have to cut, so everybody likes a different edge. Personally, I tend to go for the smooth edge more because I enjoy getting a smooth edge, just the act of doing it, and it doesn't make that much difference in what I cut, whether the edge is toothy or smooth. If I needed a knife to be used for a specific reason, like if I was on a fishing boat all day long or for a week or two at a time, I would want a toothier edge. In fact, I'd probably have a Spyderco Salt serrated edge if I was going to be cutting a lot of rope. But again, if you notice, I'm keeping the blade at a 90-degree angle with the stone. I'm locking my hand in a position to hold the edge angle. And I will say that while I'm doing this, I am raising my hand a little. I'm not raising my hand. I am twisting the knife, because knowing this is going to be a convex edge, I'm doing this a little bit, and I feel how much I do as I'm stroking, because this edge is going to be more convex than I would if I wanted to keep it at the bevel as flat as possible. Never be completely flat when you're freehand sharpen, but you can make it as flat as you possibly can, or you can intentionally make it a little bit convex. Okay, now let's see how it cuts. Okay, it's cutting nicely. Okay, I'm going to call it quits. I don't know if anybody has enjoyed this or been bored with it or learned anything. If you have seen me do something that you think could be improved on, feel free to leave a message. I don't know too much about YouTube. I know you can leave messages. I've left a couple, and I don't know if they will alert me with an email or not when somebody leaves a message so I can read it, but I'll keep checking back with YouTube. But anyway, this is what we have so far, and that was the 8K stone. I'll probably work on this a little bit more, but nothing that's going to be any more interest to anybody watching. So this has been successful. I don't know, I hope you can see that the bevel is now, it's very shiny. I'm not sure you would call it a mirror finish yet. It'll probably require a little bit more work on the 8K stone. And then I do have the 1" by 6" Edge Pro size Shapton glass 16K that I could use to really polish it up, or a strop. Strops work very well for polishing bevels and finishing the edge a little bit, but you can get the same sharp edge with a stone. It takes more practice, and you can't do it right away. I couldn't. Several months ago, I absolutely had to strop to get a real crisp edge. But now, as I've been practicing more and more on the stones, I'm getting those super sharp edges, what I call super sharp, using just the stones. And the strops are becoming less and less necessary. And that's a key thing, because you get better and better. Now, I can still improve the edge a tiny bit with a strop. Once I get it where it will whittle hair just off an 8K Shapton glass or the ultrafine Spyderco stone, you can refine it a little bit more with a strop. But at that point, the edge is so sharp that any additional refinement is not going to make any difference in your everyday life, your everyday cutting needs. But when you're first starting to learn to sharpen, a strop can improve the edge after you're done with the stones dramatically. And it'll be sharper. And there's a lot of discussion about edge retention after you strop versus using a stone. But when you're first getting started, there's a very good strop on Knives Plus. It's a strop block. It's about $20. Very nice strop that is good to learn on if you want. Anyway, I'm rambling. I am going to call it quits. This knife is now sharp. It's got a lower angle on the bevel than it started with, just about a little bit. It's still uneven. The bevel width, which is no big deal. That's what I was going to try. I made it a lot better, but it's not what you would call an even bevel by any stretch of the imagination. Anyway, I'll call it quits. You guys take care. Bye.